For decades, Russia and Europe were bound by a powerful energy relationship. Russia supplied the gas, Europe consumed it. This connection was more than just a business deal, it was a lifeline that fueled economies, heated homes, and powered industries across the continent. The flow of gas beneath fields and cities became a symbol of interdependence, linking two very different worlds through a shared need. This partnership built pipelines, funded industries, and shaped geopolitics, seeming as permanent as the steel beneath the Baltic Sea. The Nord Stream pipeline, a marvel of engineering, was celebrated as a bridge between East and West, promising stability and prosperity for generations. Billions of dollars changed hands and entire regions grew dependent on the steady pulse of Russian energy. But in 2022, everything changed. Russia's invasion of Ukraine shattered the old order. Overnight, trust evaporated, and the pipelines that once united now became symbols of risk and vulnerability. The world watched as the energy map of Europe was redrawn in real time. Gas flows slowed to a trickle, and what was once Moscow's greatest asset became a liability. The machinery that once hummed with activity now stood silent, and the future of Russia's energy empire was suddenly in question. Russia now faces a glut of unsold gas, while Europe scrambles for alternatives. Storage tanks overflow and export terminals sit idle as both sides confront a new and uncertain reality. The fallout is one of the most significant shifts in the global energy market in decades. Prices soared, markets panicked, and governments raced to secure new sources of supply. The shockwaves rippled far beyond Europe, affecting economies and energy policies worldwide. Europe, long criticized for its dependence, is paying a steep price for energy independence, but is determined to stay the course. Citizens face higher bills and colder winters, but the continent is investing heavily in renewables, LNG imports, and new infrastructure to break free from the past. Russia, meanwhile, is left searching for new markets and uses for its stranded gas. The pivot to Asia is underway, but building new pipelines and relationships takes time, and the uncertainty weighs heavily on the Russian economy. The world is watching. Can Russia reinvent itself, or is it headed for stagnation? The choices made now will echo for decades, shaping not just Russia's future, but the global balance of power. This crisis exposes the fragility of global systems and how quickly economic ties can be severed by conflict. What once seemed unbreakable has proven alarmingly vulnerable, forcing nations to rethink their strategies and alliances. The old logic, Russia sells, Europe buys, survived the Cold War and countless crises, but not this. Decades of trust and cooperation unraveled in a matter of months, leaving both sides to pick up the pieces. The weaponization of energy backfired, accelerating Europe's search for alternatives. Solar, wind, and imported LNG are now at the forefront as Europe races to build a new, more resilient energy system. Now, both sides are grappling with the consequences, and the ripple effects are global. From Asia to the Americas, energy security is back at the top of the agenda, and the world is adjusting to a new era of uncertainty. The Great Uncoupling has redrawn alliances and raised urgent questions about security and the future of energy. New partnerships are forming, old ones are dissolving, and the geopolitical landscape is shifting beneath our feet. The answer to whether Russia can turn crisis into opportunity will shape the world for years to come. Innovation, adaptation, and resilience will be tested as never before. This is the story of the great energy divorce and its uncertain aftermath. The world is watching, and the next chapter is still being written. Before 2022, Russia supplied about 40% of the EU's gas, fueling economies across the continent and powering millions of homes and industries. This vast flow of energy was the lifeblood of European growth, keeping factories running and cities warm through harsh winters. The relationship went far beyond economics, cementing a strategic bond that tied Russia and Europe together for decades. Leaders from both sides met regularly, celebrating deals that promised stability and prosperity. Pipelines like Nord Stream and Yamal Europe pumped billions of cubic meters westward every year, generating huge revenues for Russia and providing Europe with reliable, affordable energy. These projects were engineering marvels, stretching for thousands of kilometers beneath land and sea. This wasn't just business, it was a pillar of Russian statecraft, a tool for influence and leverage on the global stage. Energy exports became a cornerstone of Russia's foreign policy. The turning point came in early 2022, with Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The shockwaves were immediate, shaking the very foundation of the energy partnership. The West responded with unprecedented sanctions, targeting Russia's finances, technology, and especially its energy exports. The goal was clear: to cut off the Kremlin's economic lifeline and pressure Moscow to change course. Nord Stream 2, a massive pipeline project years in the making, was abruptly halted, an $11 billion monument to failed policy and shattered trust. The pipeline, once seen as a symbol of cooperation, now stood idle. In retaliation, Russia slashed gas supplies to unfriendly countries, hoping to divide Europe and force concessions. The Kremlin gambled that energy shortages would fracture European unity, but the strategy backfired. Instead of caving, Europe doubled down on ending its dependency, investing heavily in renewables, building new LNG terminals, and forging new partnerships around the world. The mysterious Nord Stream pipeline explosions in September 2022 made the split seem permanent, destroying key infrastructure and symbolizing the end of an era. By late 2023, Russian gas exports to Europe had plunged by over 80%, leaving once busy export terminals eerily quiet and pipelines unused. Europe survived by importing expensive LNG from the US and Qatar, accelerating the rollout of renewables like wind and solar, and encouraging citizens to conserve energy through the toughest winter in decades. The pipelines, once symbols of unity and prosperity, now stand as relics of a broken partnership, overgrown and abandoned, reminders of a different time. The energy divorce was complete, and the consequences were just beginning to unfold, reshaping geopolitics, economies, and the future of energy in Europe and beyond. With Europe gone, Russia faces a massive gas surplus. Siberian gas fields and westward pipelines were built for a single customer, Europe. Now Russia produces far more gas than it can use or export. Gazprom's profits have collapsed and wells are being shut in, risking permanent damage. The Kremlin is scrambling for solutions, pivoting to domestic consumption, but with a twist. One idea: use cheap gas to power massive AI data centers in Siberia where cold air cools servers. Another: attract crypto miners with low-cost electricity from surplus gas. Russia also hopes to revive its chemicals industry, turning gas into fertilizers and plastics for export. But sanctions and market volatility make these plans risky and uncertain. The shift is ambitious, but it's a fundamental change in Russia's economic strategy. Russia's unwanted treasure is now a test of its ability to adapt. Shut out of Europe, Russia looks east, especially to China. With its traditional markets in the West now largely closed off due to sanctions and political tensions, Moscow is forced to seek new partners and opportunities in Asia, hoping to secure its economic future. The Power of Siberia pipeline now sends gas to China, marking a major shift in Russia's energy strategy. Eager to maintain its status as a global energy powerhouse, Russia is pushing for a second, even bigger pipeline, Power of Siberia 2, which would further deepen its ties with China and potentially reshape regional energy flows. But China knows Russia's weak position and demands steep discounts. Beijing is in no rush, using its leverage to negotiate favorable terms, aware that Russia has few other options left. Even if built, the new pipeline can't fully replace the lost European market. The sheer scale of Europe's previous demand is unmatched, and the infrastructure shift is both costly and time-consuming. Russia is also trying to boost LNG sales to India and Pakistan, but its capacity is limited, and sanctions block expansion. These new markets offer some hope, but logistical challenges and international restrictions make rapid growth difficult. The pivot to Asia is slow, expensive, and uncertain, a move born of necessity, not strategy. Massive investments are required, and the returns are far from guaranteed, leaving Russia in a precarious position. Asian buyers are wary of over-reliance on Russia, diversifying their own energy sources. They are actively seeking alternatives, from renewables to other suppliers, to avoid being caught in future geopolitical crossfires. For Russia, the Asian dream offers some relief, but it's no silver bullet. The challenges are immense, and the benefits, while real, are limited compared to what was lost in Europe. The gas glut remains, and the future is still unclear. Russia faces mounting storage issues and uncertain demand, with no easy solution in sight. Russia's eastward gamble is a high-stakes bet with no guaranteed payoff. The risks are enormous, and the outcome will shape the country's economic fate for years to come. The world watches as Moscow tries to rewrite its energy destiny, uncertain whether this new Asian dream will become a reality or remain just that, a dream. Western sanctions have created a technological blockade for Russia's energy sector. Russia relied on Western expertise for everything from drilling to LNG plant turbines. Now, projects like Arctic LNG 2 face delays and cost overruns as Western firms exit. Russia is racing to develop its own technology, but it's a slow, uphill battle. Plans for AI data centers and a modern chemicals industry are hampered by lack of access to advanced chips and patented processes. Import substitution is costly and uncertain. Chinese tech isn't always a substitute, and Chinese firms fear secondary sanctions. The sanctions wall is a major barrier to Russia's ambitions. Without a technological breakthrough, Russia's energy future remains constrained. The collapse of gas exports isn't just a Kremlin problem, it's a crisis for Russia's heartland. Towns in Siberia and the Yamal Peninsula were built around gas. Millions depended on Gazprom for jobs and services. Now, with projects cancelled and wells shut, uncertainty and anxiety are rising. Gazprom has cut bonuses and halted expansion, leading to declining incomes and a potential brain drain. Local economies and government budgets are strained, threatening public services and social stability. The social fabric in these harsh regions is fraying. The Kremlin's ability to maintain its social contract is weakening as revenues fall. The human cost of the gas glut is a slow-burning crisis, far from Moscow's spotlight. Europe's break from Russian gas brought a severe energy crunch and soaring prices. Governments spent hundreds of billions to shield citizens and businesses, straining budgets and fueling inflation. Europe scrambled for LNG, sparking a global bidding war and building new import terminals. The US and Qatar became Europe's main suppliers, shifting the energy map. The crisis accelerated Europe's green transition. Renewables and efficiency surged. The EU aims to phase out all Russian fossil fuels by 2027, making the split permanent. But dependence on global LNG markets brings new risks and volatility. Energy security and decarbonization are now Europe's twin challenges. The cost of energy freedom is high, but the continent is determined to stay the course. Europe's energy revolution is underway, but the road ahead is uncertain. The energy divorce has redrawn the global map of winners and losers. The US, Qatar, and Australia are big winners, exporting more LNG and gaining influence. Russia is the biggest loser, losing its top market and decades of trust. Developing nations have suffered too, priced out of LNG by Europe's demand, facing shortages and unrest. Europe now depends on volatile global markets instead of Russian pipelines. Russia's reliance on China brings new vulnerabilities. The era of stable pipeline contracts is over. The spot market rules, bringing more uncertainty. Energy security is now a top priority for all nations. The Great Uncoupling has ushered in a turbulent new era for global energy. Russia's gas glut is a stark lesson in how quickly global power can shift. What was once a strategic asset is now a liability, and the rupture with Europe seems permanent. Russia faces technological isolation, shrinking revenues, and growing dependence on China. Ambitious plans for AI, crypto, and chemicals face daunting obstacles. Europe, meanwhile, is paying a high price for independence but accelerating its green transition. The world is adjusting to a new, more volatile energy reality. Russia's future depends on its ability to adapt and innovate in a changed world. The next chapter is unwritten, and the world is watching.